Hello again, my little conscripts, and welcome to another Mordian Glory video. In today's episode, we are going to be casting our ever-critical eye over a 10th edition Imperial Guard datasheet. And this time, we have in our crosshairs another Imperial Guard Super Heavy. It is the Banehammer. It's a big tank with a big gun and a big transport capacity. But the big question is, can it perform on the tabletop? Well, there's only one way to find out. Let's mount up, roll out, and dive right into this thing.
Attention, guardsmen. The Commissariat has detected you have not yet liked this video. Do so immediately, or else you will face the Emperor's wrath. And anyone who has not yet subscribed to the channel will be transferred to the penal battalions. That is all. Move out!
As is tradition, we'll start off with a cheeky gander at the Banehammer's stat line, and then we'll go through the rest of the datasheet, giving it a good deep dive and review. At the end of the video, we'll touch upon some tactics and some thoughts about how you can use this unit on the tabletop. So let's get our fingers into that stat line, and we've got a movement of 12 inches. That's actually pretty fast. That's faster than Leman Russ's, Rogue Dawn's. Pretty much most other guard armor runs around at about 10 inches. This thing can rock around at 12 inches. And that does make a big difference. You've got to think about all of the L-shaped ruins that are on boards, 40k boards these days. Having a 12-inch move means that you've almost got like a free pivot involved there. You can get yourself round the corners that otherwise you might struggle with. However, it is important to note that unlike many other guard units, at the time of recording, now this may change in the future, but at the time of recording, the Banehammer cannot receive orders. In fact, no guard super heavy can receive orders. So there's no way of boosting that up to a 15-inch move with something like move. So I think, personally, GW has given it a 12-inch move, knowing that it won't be able to receive move. Because let me tell you, the idea of a Baneblade or Banehammer or other guard super heavy moving 15 inches and then blasting people is quite terrifying. So I suspect they might have dialed it back a little bit for those reasons. Now, of course, this being a super heavy, we're going to have a hell of a defensive profile as well. And the Banehammer does not disappoint. Toughness 13 is a big deal. In fact, out of all of these defensive points, T13, 2+ save and 24 wounds, I would argue that T13 is the most important one. Why? Because it determines how you're going to be wounded. Specifically, it gives you a lot of protection against things like las cannons. So las cannons and their equivalent are what I would say is the most common form of anti-tank in the game. It's the baseline to which all other anti-tanks are built around. They tend to be strength 12, AP -3 with D6 +1 or D6 +2 damage. Now, against vehicles like the Leman Russ, because they're strength 12 and the Leman Russ is T11, they wound those vehicles on 3s, and so las cannons and their equivalent can be quite a threat to things like the Russ. The Rogue Dawn is a little bit tougher, being T12, and so it's like a 50-50 on whether that las cannon is going to wound. But with modifiers like +1 to wound, you tend to find that the Dawn does get las cannoned down if the enemy wants it to. T13 is a big difference, because T13 means you're being wounded on 5s. So the vast majority of the time, 66% of the time that your opponent goes to wound you with a baseline, with the go-to, with the quintessential anti-tank weapon that so many factions are equipped with, whether it's actually las cannon or just a renamed one, but it basically does the same thing as a las cannon, 60% of the time it just fails. That's a really big deal. Even if someone starts having things like +1 to wound, or they've got re-rolls to wound, it's still not guaranteed. So the best defensive measure of the Banehammer, the one that has inbuilt to its profile, is not the 2+ save, because loads of vehicles have got a 2+ save. It's not the 24 wounds, it's the try and wound me if you can. Now, I want to make something abundantly clear. The Banehammer is tough, but it's not invincible. Remember, we're playing 10th edition, and at the time of recording, we're looking at this through the lens of late 10th edition. So lethality is definitely a thing. T13 will help. T13 will take the edge off, but T13 won't stop your Banehammer from dying. It's good, it's tough, but it's not invincible. Rounding out the stat line, we have a leadership of 7+. I've said this before when I reviewed the Bane Blade, but I do think that Guard Super Heavy should have a leadership of 6+. After all, only the bravest and best crews are allowed to operate them, and because we don't have access to things like orders, we have no way of boosting this up to like leadership 6 with something like duty and honor. So it would be nice for it to have a leadership 6 inbuilt. But it's not the end of the world. Battle Shock isn't really very impactful in 40k. Then we've got objective control of 8, and that is actually a really big deal, because being able to dump just taking a tiny bit of track, towing that onto the objective, and being able to dump 8 objective control on it is fantastic. That will flip objectives on its own. If there's 5 elite infantry, like 5 Terminators sat on an objective, you can just, and you say, who takes Terminators? Well, a lot of Death Guard players like Terminators, right? But, you know, if there's just like a few Terminators sat on an objective, you can just go, you know what? Banehammer, that's my objective now. It's OCA is one of the best bits about this stat line. Overall, that is a very good stat line. It's a premium stat line. But at the end of the day, this is a Guard Super Heavy, so it makes sense that it's going to have a premium stat line, because it is a premium unit. But what about its firepower? This thing we know can take damage, but can it dish it out? Well, let's get into the weapons and war gear. As standard issue, the Banehammer comes equipped with 2 las cannons, a tremor cannon, a twin heavy bolter, and 2 twin heavy flamers. You can, in addition, give this vehicle an additional 2 las cannons and 2 twin heavy bolters, or 2 las cannons and 2 twin heavy flamers. Also, you can swap out the model's 2 twin heavy flamers for 2 twin heavy bolters. So if we take a look at this thing, essentially, it's much easier to visualize what weapons it's got by looking at it. You can see that it comes with the 2 heavy bolters in the front and a set of sponsons on each side. Each one of those sponsons comes with another couple of heavy bolters and a las cannon, and you can get an extra set of these sponsons. So you can imagine it's got 4 of these things, 2 on this side, 2 on that side. So in total, your Banehammer should be rocking 5 twin heavy bolters, 4 las cannons, and a tremor cannon. Quick side note, some of you may be wondering whether you should take the twin heavy flamers or you should be sticking with twin heavy bolters everywhere. I would say always go for the twin heavy bolters. There are a number of reasons for this. Firstly, the twin heavy flamers don't fire 2d6 shots. They fire d6 shots with twin linked. So the volume of fire there is very swingy. It's only 5d6. It's not reliable enough at all, especially considering the short ranged. On top of this, you also can't overwatch with the Banehammer. It's a super heavy. No super heavies in 40k are allowed to have the overwatch stratagem used on them. Now, if this thing could take, if each heavy flamer was individual, so it was firing like 10d6 heavy flamer shots, something mad, and then also you could overwatch with it, then sure, I would say definitely go for the flamers on the Banehammer. But as that is not the case, and you can't do that, go all heavy bolters all the way. Now, speaking of the heavy bolters, let's look at the accoutrement quickly here. But of course, the main star of the show is going to be that tremor cannon. So the twin heavy bolters are exactly what you would expect. They are sustained hits 1, they're twin linked, you get 3 shots per one of them, you've got 5 of them because you're going to have the 1 on the front, and then you're going to have 1 at each set of sponsons, and you can have 4 sponsons in total. So that'll be 15 twin heavy bolter shots in total. That's a good potential for sustained hits, and they are going to hit a ballistic skill 4+, strength 5, AP -1, damage 2. Heavy bolters are okay. Not great, not terrible, they're just okay. Through sheer weight of firepower and the fact that they've got twin linked, you will find, and the fact they've got sustained hits, you'll find that these actually do end up stacking a lot of wounds on your opponent. Just don't be disappointed if that doesn't translate into many failed saves, because AP -1 is a little bit lackluster in an edition where everyone basically has cover all of the time. Then we've got the las cannons. These are also standard issue. Same here as you would find anywhere else in the Imperial Guard and other factions. They are the quintessential anti-tank. We touched upon these before, and it is very good that you get 4 of these on your Banehammer. One thing I do want to point out, it is important to note that the Banehammer does not have the hull-mounted demolisher cannon. If we go back and look at the Baneblade, you can see that not only do we have the potential to take all of those sponsons, but we also, in addition to the main gun of the vehicle, we also have that hull-mounted demolisher cannon. Now, the Banehammer does not have that, and that is going to impact the amount of firepower it can put down range. But what it does have is the tremor cannon. This is a 36-inch range blast weapon which fires 2d6 plus 3 shots at ballistic skill 4+, strength 12, AP -2, damage 3. This weapon is okay. In essence, it is going to fire 2d6 plus 3 oppressor cannon shots, like the Rogal Dawn. This thing essentially is armed with the Rogal Dawn's main gun that just fires an extra d6 shots. Now, on average, that is an extra 3 to 4 shots. Now, I'm not trying to put the tremor cannon down, and I'm not saying it's a bad weapon. It just doesn't get me very hyped up. At the end of the day, it's a super heavy vehicle. It should have some kind of gun that feels super heavy and crazy. As it is, the tremor cannon just feels like a better version of the same gun you can find on a regular tank. You might be wondering, well, why the hell would I ever take the Banehammer then? Why wouldn't I just take something like 2 Rogal Dawns? That's a good question. The answer is because the Banehammer does more than just firepower. It also transports infantry. It has given up some of its boom boom in order to transport a full platoon of guard infantry. It can take up to 26 Astra Militarum infantry. Of course, Ogres take up 3 spaces and you can't stick artillery in here. Now, 26 infantry is actually a really good amount because that's like a full blob of Kriegers with a Krieg command squad, or it's a full blob of Cadians or Catachans with a command squad and an extra character attached to it. Or it's actually, you could put a crap load of the Krieg heavy weapon teams in here. Krieg heavy weapon teams, I think, take up the space of 7 models in a squad. So if you took all 3 of them with like flamers and stuck them in here, you'd be able to transport all of them and still have like 5 slots left over. So it's a really, really healthy transport capacity. And how you leverage that transport capacity, I think, is going to be very, very important to you feeling like you're getting your money's worth with the Banehammer. It is important to note that not only is it a transport, but it also has a firing deck, and 6 people can shoot out of the top. Although, again, remember that heavy weapon teams of all sizes count as 2 models for the purposes of using the firing deck. So if you were to, like we said before, put like loads of Krieg heavy weapon teams in here, only 3 of those weapon teams could shoot out of the top. Now we're going to circle back round to what kind of infantry and what kind of tactics you're going to use with the transport capacity in the firing deck in a moment. We'll just finish off the datasheet first, and then we'll get into those advanced tactics towards the end. And to be honest, the last bit we need to talk about is the Banehammer's abilities. We've obviously talked about firing deck already. Deadly Demise D6 plus 2. It's a big vehicle. If it blows up, it's going to do a lot of mortal wounds. The biggie is Tremor Quake. In your shooting phase, just after selecting a target for this model's tremor cannon, the target unit and every other enemy infantry within 3 inches of the unit must take a battle shock test. Now, traditionally, battle shock has been seen as kind of wank, and having an ability that is based around battle shock is also seen as kind of shit. You're not too far off with assuming that about Tremor Quake. I don't think it's a great ability. I think the main ability of this thing is the transport capacity. But it does have a silver lining that I think is worth highlighting. Tremor Quake happens before you roll your attacks. You just target the enemy unit, then they have to take a battle shock test. And the reason this is important is because many defensive stratagems are triggered when you target the enemy unit. So you go to shoot them and they go -1 to hit. And then now you have to resolve all of your attacks, and if the -1 to hit, maybe all your shots go wide. With Tremor Quake, your opponent can go -1 to hit, and you can go, okay, take a battle shot test for me. And if they fail that battle shot test, then they can't benefit from that stratagem, because if you fail battle shock, you can't have any stratagems played on you. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe any stratagems that were on your unit also stop affecting you as well. Now, if that second bit isn't correct, let me know down in the comment section. But fortunately, it doesn't really matter with Tremor Quake, because you could just say take the battleshot test first. Because as the controlling player, you can decide what order things happen in if things happen simultaneously in a turn. So, for example, with Tremor Quake, it says after selecting a target, your opponent go, well, when you select target, I can play my stratagem. You can go, actually, I'm the controlling player, so battleshot test first. Oh, look, you failed your battleshot test. Now you can't target the unit stratagem. So either way, however you play it, this has a way of denying your opponent putting stratagems on their units. That can really mess with your opponent's defensive buffs and might mean that the Banehammer can actually punch a little bit harder than it would first appear. The issue, of course, with Tremor Quake is we talk about how it could deny all these defensive bonuses, but if your opponent just passes a battleshot test, then this unit's ability is essentially useless. So overall, I don't rate Tremor Quake at all. I think it has the potential to occasionally catch your opponent off guard, but a bit like the main gun, the Tremor Cannon, for a super heavy, I find it an underwhelming ability. I want something bigger, bolder, more exciting. Now that just about covers everything on the Banehammer's datasheet, but let's scratch below the surface. Let's deep dive this thing. Let's start off with the positives. At the end of the day, the Banehammer is a super heavy, and bring a super heavy to a game can catch your opponent off guard. The current meta at the moment is much more focused on elite infantry, and whilst, like I said at the beginning, this thing isn't invincible, I have noticed that, well, there's a reason Imperial Knights have been doing very well recently. People have been speccing more into elite infantry, they've been bringing a bit less anti-tank, and so super heavies and vehicle heavy armies have started to flourish a bit more. Previously, at the beginning of the edition, everyone was focused on taking all anti-tank all of the way. That shifted a little bit, so now we're finding a bit more wiggle room for these things. And I have played a couple of games now where I've used a guard super heavy, and just because my opponent hadn't brought enough firepower to deal with one of them, they brought enough firepower to deal with any Russes or Dawns that I brought, but they just hadn't quite brought that firepower that was needed to deal with a super heavy. I actually found that my Banehammer, even though it can't receive orders, so it can't hit on a 3+, it's going to be stuck hitting on 4+ ballistic skill, even with that taken into account, it was just doing enough damage every turn that it actually arguably won the game for me. Now, obviously, that's a general point to talk about guards, super heavies in general, but it does apply to the Banehammer. So it's got good firepower, and whilst it's not got the best firepower, if your opponent isn't prepared to deal with it, it can really chuck a spanner in the works. However, if we're taking a super heavy because of its firepower, the Banehammer is not the best choice, because you've got things like the Shadow Sword out there, you've got things like the Bane Sword out there, which arguably just bring a lot more boom boom. So if you're going to bring the Banehammer, you have to think about it as a super heavy first, but a transport second. That is very important. You need to be able to leverage that transport capacity. And there are two ways of doing that. The first method is you acknowledge it only has a firing deck of 6, so you put the minimum amount of infantry inside it to take advantage of that firing deck. Typically, you see people taking heavy weapon squads and putting them inside, something like las cannons on a Catachan heavy weapon squad. That does help solve the Banehammer's firepower situation, because adding 3 extra las cannons in is never a bad thing. But I think it's a trap, because the Banehammer starts off at 450 points. If you add a heavy weapon squad inside it, it's going to go up to 515 points. So it goes from being one of the cheaper super heavies to being one of the most expensive super heavies. And if you're wanting a super heavy that can do firepower, again, there are better, cheaper options out there, like the Shadow Sword, like the Bane Sword. So this brings us to our second option. You put a lot of infantry inside it. You leverage that 26-man capacity. Either you put a full blob of infantry inside and you go, I'm going to drive forward, and then I'm going to dump out like 50 plus, or how much OC would it be? If you had 20 guardsmen plus a command squad, and that command squad's got a flag in it, you're looking at what, like roughly 70 OC. I'm going to dump 70 objective control onto this. That's definitely your objective. Definitely your objective. Or you go, I'm going to put firepower in here. Maybe you go for a full gigablob of Scions, or you go for a couple of squads of Kazakin, one of the squads being led by Castellan, so they can all get like double orders. That's another way of looking at it. Both of those options are very expensive though. And we talked about going up to 515 points. How about going up to close on 700 points? Because the Banehammer plus a Castellan plus 2 squads of Kazakin. I think that comes to like 725 points roughly off the top of my head. Very, very expensive. And this is where we really get to the downfall of the Banehammer. There are just other things in your army which can do its job better. If you want to have Kazakin drive forward, jump out, and delete things, you've got Chimeras and Tauruxes which are going to do that job much cheaper. If you want firepower, then you've got vehicles which can do that much cheaper. The selling point of the Banehammer is that it can do all of these things, but you have to pay for all of these things, and at the end of the day it's only one vehicle, which means if it gets destroyed, which is very likely, then your whole list will fall apart. I want to like the Banehammer, but unfortunately I don't see a home for it in almost any guard army except a meme list or someone who is trying some crazy skew tactic. Maybe you go taking 2 of these things, you load them up with loads of elite infantry, your whole army is basically inside 2 of these Banehammers driving across the board, and you've got a few like action monkeys afterwards. Maybe. I could see that catching people off guard 2 or 3 games at a tournament. But I see it as a very high risk strategy that has the potential for, if people are ready for it, you go 0-3 at an RTT, you go 0-5 at a GT. In summary, the Banehammer is a guard super heavy. So fundamentally, it's cool. It wins at rule of cool. But it doesn't quite have the firepower, and if you want to take advantage of its transport capacity, then it starts becoming a lot of eggs in one basket. But of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What do you think about the Banehammer? Do you think that I've overlooked anything? Maybe there's another angle I need to approach this from? Or do you think that maybe it is one of the, well, frankly, one of the worst guard super heavies? If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to go ahead and smash that like button and also subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing, truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full time without the incredible and generous support of my members, so thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Bon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.